Lying is a universal part of the human experience. From small white lies to protect someone's feelings, to elaborate fabrications meant to deceive, almost everyone has told a lie at some point. But what exactly happens when we lie? Is there a way to spot a lie just by listening to someone's words or watching their body language? Understanding the language of lying can help us become more aware of how and why people bend the truth and perhaps even make us more honest ourselves. Let's begin by considering why people lie in the first place. The motivations behind lying are as varied as the lies themselves. Some people lie to avoid punishment or embarrassment, while others do it to gain an advantage, impress others, or protect someone else. Sometimes people lie simply because they can't resist the thrill of getting away with it. But regardless of the motive, lying is a complex psychological process that requires mental effort and planning. When we lie, our brains work harder than when we tell the truth. That's because we have to keep track of the false information we're presenting, make sure our story is consistent, and remember what we've already said. We also have to monitor the reactions of the person we're lying to and adjust our story if we sense they're becoming suspicious. All of this takes up cognitive resources, which can sometimes lead to mistakes or telltale signs that we're not being truthful. One of the most fascinating aspects of lying is that it often shows up in our language, even if we're trying our best to hide it. Research has shown that when people lie, they tend to use fewer first-person pronouns like I or me. This is because liars often want to distance themselves from the lie, so they unconsciously avoid taking ownership of their statements. Instead, they might say something like, "The car was damaged," instead of, "I damaged the car." Liars also tend to use more negative words, perhaps because they feel guilty or anxious about what they're saying. They might use phrases like never, nothing, or no one, as if trying to shut down any further questions. In addition, their stories might lack sensory details or specific information. For example, instead of describing what they saw, heard, or felt, they might keep their story vague and general. Another clue to spotting a lie is inconsistency. Because lying requires so much mental effort, it's easy to lose track of the details. If someone's story changes over time, or if different parts of their story don't quite fit together, that could be a sign that they're not telling the whole truth. However, it's important to remember that not all inconsistencies mean someone is lying. Sometimes, people just forget details or make honest mistakes. Body language can also play a role in detecting deception. When people lie, they might avoid eye contact, touch their face or mouth, or fidget nervously. But these signs aren't foolproof. Some people are naturally anxious, and skilled liars can control their body language very well. That's why it's important to look for clusters of clues, rather than relying on just one sign. Interestingly, technology has made it both easier and harder to lie. On one hand, digital communication allows people to carefully craft their messages and erase any mistakes before sending them. On the other hand, written communication lacks the nonverbal cues that can help us detect deception in face-to-face conversations. This means we have to pay even closer attention to the words people use and look for patterns that might indicate dishonesty. So, how can we become better at spotting lies? The key is to be observant and ask good questions. Pay attention to how someone tells their story. Do they seem comfortable and consistent, or do they hesitate and contradict themselves? Listen for distancing language, vague statements, or a lack of specific details. And most importantly, trust your instincts. If something feels off, it's worth taking a closer look. But perhaps the most important lesson is to use this knowledge responsibly. While it's tempting to try and catch others in a lie, it's also important to remember that everyone makes mistakes, and not every inconsistency is a sign of deception. By understanding the language of lying, we can become more empathetic communicators, and maybe even encourage more honesty in our own lives. Lying may be a part of human nature, but so is the desire to seek the truth. By learning to recognize the subtle signals of deception, we can navigate our interactions with greater awareness and understanding. In the end, honesty builds trust, and trust is the foundation of all meaningful relationships.